ready to move on to the third part and the final part of today. So just to recap so far, when we begin with concentrated awareness, the first part of making our case, we bring attention to the breath. We aim it there, we sustain it for as long as we can. And if our mind wanders, or I should say when our mind wanders, and we catch it, we intentionally and deliberately bring it back to the breath. And that's the process, that's the practice. Do it for 5 seconds, do it for 1 minute, do it for 5 minutes. Do it when you're sitting down, getting ready to begin class. Do it when you're at the library, taking a break. Do it when you wake up. Do it before you go to bed. Do it while you're talking to somebody. Just bring awareness to your breathing. One breath is really phenomenal, and it's practicing. And it's also practicing interrupting where the mind might be moving in an agitated, distracted way, bringing it back home. And so we practice that. We then move, and if you will, add on to that concentrated awareness, sensory expansion, where we allow the breath to be but one of the many objects arising in the moment that we attend to with an interested, curious mind, just open to it. And so we practice that, watching of the wheels, allowing the clouds to pass. And again, for a minute, or 2, or 3. And you'll find that sometimes you'll be standing in front of somebody, and they'll be saying something that's really beginning to bother you. And you begin to say, ugh, I can't stand this person, or I don't want to be here. And all of a sudden you'll say, oh, there's a wheel going around. Scott can't stand being here. Scott doesn't want to be here. Scott doesn't like this person. Scott's, how interesting. Scott's getting antsy. You'll take a breath. And if the right thing to do is to conclude your conversation and go on, you'll be more likely to do that in a way that's constructive. And if something that's being told to you is important information that just happens to be agitating, you'll be a little bit more easily able to be there for it. Because this mind that will have begun to move, and this body that will have begun to shift in this agitated, stressed out way, doesn't necessarily move in that direction with the same intensity, or begins to step away from it because of the awareness you brought to those moments. Now we're going to do, if you will, if this here is the concentrated awareness, and this is the sensory expansion, and this is the hand, and of course the 4, 7, 8 hands exercise, and I'll give you all a card before you leave if you don't have one, that reminds you of the steps, is one of the learned hand exercises. This next meditation is a bringing together of 2 hands, if you will. It's a compassion meditation / visualization. When Richard Davidson, the neuroscientist I mentioned a little while ago, did some very important, groundbreaking research looking at people who've meditated for tens of thousands of hours and looked at their brain, he found, among other things, that there was this tendency upon moving into this type of meditation, a meditation not unlike the one we're going to do, where just feelings of compassion just flow out. Just feelings of compassion, having this mind that is just open with compassion for all. It takes practice, right, to cultivate that mind. And the exercise that we'll do in a moment is one of those exercises that can help to cultivate that mind, that as they began to shift into doing that type of mental exercise, bodily exercise, of compassion, gamma waves, a very high frequency, high oscillation activity of the brain kicked in gear at levels never before recorded in a human being. These gamma waves activity appear to be associated with the connecting or the integrating of different parts of the brain. Right? So they communicate, work well together. And interestingly, even when people who were controls were just learning meditation, not unlike what we're doing here, a little shift of gamma activity was detected for them. But for those who had been doing it for a long period of time, it was a huge shift. And when they were told to stop, this is where it gets really interesting, when they were told to stop, oh, okay, you can stop now. Just go back to just nothing, just, whatever. The gamma activity stayed high, whereas instantly it dropped with anybody else. And this suggests strongly that the practicing of these mental exercises brings about interesting shifts in the activity of the brain, and those shifts are associated with a certain type of productivity and integrated quality of well-being as well. In the December Res Ipsa publication of the University of Miami School of Law, the Mindfulness Memo article will be called Brain versus Board of Education, right? And it's about, as we're getting closer to finals, right, as this sort of semester is now in the middle area moving on, things can get old, right? Things can get overwhelming. We can find ourselves getting maybe from time to time a little bored of doing this, or maybe procrastinating for interesting reasons. And what we can do, and in that article it really reflects on the work we've done with exercise and sleep. But what we're talking about here today is very much relevant as well. And if the article could be longer, it would have included this particular work. To integrate, right? Because of course Brown versus Board of Education was about integrating. And here we're talking about an area called neural integration. And gamma wave activity is associated with neural integration.